Joe Lynham, well, the elections may have been over a week ago, but Georgios Papakonstantinou is still a Greek cabinet minister for PASOK, and we can talk to him now about those efforts to cobble together a government in Athens. Here in London, we have Wolf Pikolea, a Greek specialist from the Eurasia Group, and Megan Green, who specialises in the Eurozone debt crisis at Rubini Global Economics. Minister, first in Athens, just talking about the next 24 hours, Greece has to deliver €436 million tomorrow. No authorisation by government to do so. Will it happen?
Well, we'll have to wait for tomorrow to see that. Actually, it's one of the holdout bonds that did not participate in the exchange offer. So a decision needs to be made, and it will be announced tomorrow whether that obligation is honoured or not.
But of course, that is one of only, in a sense, a sidebar to the main event as to whether you can actually form a government. And all the talk today, I gather, there has been talk of a technocrat government. What are the chances of being able to pull that off?
Well, as you know, these elections produced a very fragmented result. Traditionally in Greece, the first party would get around 45% of the vote, and the second one would get around 40%. In this case, none of the parties got over 20%. The largest party got 19%. So this is a very different result from what we're used to. And discussions are ongoing at the moment between the leaders of the party under the President of the Republic to see whether we can form a coalition, because it's clear that it's time for coalition politics in Greece.
But if you, it's obviously in your interest to make sure that you don't have another election, because the anti-bailout parties are growing their own votes. Syriza, a latest opinion poll, puts them at 20%. Now, that makes them a considerable force. They won't do a deal with you, will they?
I think the interest of not holding another election is perhaps not so much whether the anti-bailout parties would grow or not. It's because Greece is running out of time. We're running out of money, and we need a government as soon as possible. The discussions today did not produce a result. Hopefully, they will be resuming tomorrow, and hopefully we'll manage to get a coalition. The latest proposal on the table is that of a technocratic government, which would have the support of at least 3 parties, possibly 4.
The conundrum here, looking in on Greece, is that Greek people say over and over that they want to stay in the euro, but they actually want to renegotiate the terms of the bailout again and again. These two things are incompatible, aren't they? I mean, it's a dream. It's a nightmare.
Well, indeed, 8 out of 10 Greek people want to stay in the euro consistently. All the polls show that.
But they're
at
not
the same time,
to take a hit. They're not prepared to. They're not prepared to take the austerity measures they need to take. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
That is right. This is right. I mean, it's the 5th year of a recession. Yeah. People are hurting. People are seeing the salaries cut by up to 40%. Taxes have gone up. 1 in 2 young people is unemployed. Unemployment rate overall is over 20%. So this is a vote of anger. It's a vote of disillusionment. It's a vote of protest. It's not necessarily a vote of rejection, and it's certainly not a vote that believes that the programs of these parties will ever be implemented, because these programs of some of these leftist parties lead us right out of the Eurozone.
Is the Iceland model of default, does that hold any attractions for Greece?
No. We've had the biggest debt restructuring in world history. We shaved 50 percentage points off our national debt. But this was a debt restructuring together with our European partners and the IMF. It was a voluntary debt restructuring, which could happen only because our European partners agreed to recapitalize the Greek banks and help us in this sequence. But we cannot compare a country of 350,000 people, which is what Iceland is, with a Eurozone member of 11 million people that has the same currency as other countries.
Megan, do you think that an exit, however chaotic, muddled, whatever, is inevitable?
I do think an exit is inevitable, and that Greece could finally return to sustainable growth if it were to exit the Eurozone. But choreography is key. It's in absolutely nobody's best interest for Greece to have a disorderly default and exit.
From your point of view, though, you just keep kicking the idea of austerity into the long grass longer and longer. That in itself becomes a strategy.
Well, it has been a strategy for the last 2 years, and the reality here is that Greece, with the second bailout, has managed to get even more funding than the first bailout. The package needs to be renegotiated, and I believe that from the Troika side, there is a willingness to renegotiate the package on the margin. But for that, we need a workable government, and now in Greece, we don't have one.
And what chance of finding one? I mean, the PASOK, they're not going to make it without the marginal parties, and the marginal parties are gaining ground, and they're anti-bailout.
You're absolutely right. The chances of creating a government during this round of talks, I think, are fairly slim. Most likely, we are heading for a second election, and the risk is that the second election could be equally inconclusive. That is the biggest risk.
If it's equally conclusive, then you head towards the end of June, where you're meant to be prepared to put the austerity measures in place in order to get the bailout that the country needs at the end of June to pay pensions, to pay workers.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think the take-home message is it almost doesn't matter whether Greece can put together a government in the next 2 days or if they go to a new election. No matter what, the coalition that emerges will not be stable and won't be sustainable. And I think Greece will head to elections again by the end of the year.
Now the talk is of contagion. Where do you think the worst hit will be?
We've already seen it. The worst hit will go straight to Spain. And I think that's why, the Troika will be willing to play ball with whatever government arises in Greece, because the Troika has no interest in Greece defaulting and leaving the Eurozone now when Spain is right in the center of this crisis. We've seen, as drama has arisen out of Greece, bond yields in Spain have gone up and up. And it's partly also due to underlying fundamentals in Spain as well. But we have seen direct contagion from Greece to Spain. And, Greece is one question, but Spain is much, much bigger and more systemically important for the Eurozone.
What's your analysis of Spain, though, Wolf?
I totally agree with Megan on this. The timing, the circumstances play in favor of Greece for the time being, because the risk, the moment in which you go for Euro exit, you break one of the biggest taboo, that the Euro is unbreakable. Once you create that kind of precedent, you don't know what is going to be next.
But don't we, at the moment, the difference is now that we have this kind of permanent financial firewall, that it will stop the spread, no?
Well, we don't have it yet, right? The EU bailout funds have to raise the money. The IMF countries have pledged money, but it isn't there yet. And so that's part of the problem is, Spain is heading straight for a bailout, but it isn't quite there yet. And if Greece were to default and exit now, Spain would need a bailout, tomorrow. And they don't have the money in place yet.
So for all these reasons, then, there's no question that Greece would be allowed to even go. There'll be a renegotiation. There'll be a softening of the line from Brussels and Berlin.
As long as we see the emergence of a government who is still committed to the core of the program and there is a willingness to renegotiate on the side. That is a key condition coming from Brussels and specifically from Berlin.
What do you think the view looks like from Athens of the new French President Hollande? Will that change the atmosphere, do you think, in Europe? Papa Constantino, do you think the election of Monsieur Hollande will actually, President Hollande, who's going to meet Angela Merkel tomorrow night, will change the atmosphere in Europe?
Yes, I think it will, although I'm not expecting any miracles here. I think it will shift the debate in Europe, and it will be much more pro-growth and realizing the limits of austerity, but I don't expect this to happen overnight. At the end of the day, we still need to implement a program, and we've gone a very long way. I mean, remember that at the beginning of this drama, we were at a deficit of 16%. It's now down to 9%. Our competitiveness had eroded over 10 years. We've clawed back half of what we lost since we entered the Eurozone. And a lot of structural reforms have been put in place. So it's not as if Greece has not been doing the work. It's just that it's clear that we need more time. And clearly, of course, we need a government that is committed to doing this. And I hope that this is what will emerge either in the talks tomorrow or right after the next election through some kind of a coalition.
Just before we go, difference in atmosphere with President Hollande?
Yeah, I think the Eurozone leaders will talk more about a growth strategy, and that will help on the margins. But, it takes time for a growth strategy to be implemented and actually feed into the real economy, and we don't have that time.
Thank you very much indeed. Wednesday's unemployment figures, expected to hit a 13-year high at a whopping 2.75 million, are hardly likely to do anything to alleviate the gloom generated by the euro crisis and the failure to generate any growth in the British economy. But is there anything more that could be done to help get the British economy moving? And